At first the people of Rotundia were quite pleased with having their very own dragon. He lived by the pillar, and he fed himself on the bun trees, but by and by he began to wander. He would creep into the burrows made by the great rabbits, and excursionists sporting on the downs would see his long, tight, whip-like tail wriggling down a burrow and out of sight, and before they had time to say, "There he goes," his ugly purple head would come poking out from another rabbit hole, perhaps just behind them, or he would laugh softly in their ears. And the dragon's laugh was not a merry laugh. This sort of hide-and-seek amused people at first, but by and by it began to get on their nerves. And then the dragon got into the habit of cracking his tail as people crack whips, and that got on people's nerves. Then little things began to be missed. You know how unpleasant that is, even in private school, and in a public kingdom it is of course much worse. The things that were missed were not much at first. A few little elephants, a hippopotamus or two, some giraffes, things like that. Nothing much, as I say, but it made people feel uncomfortable. Then one day a favorite rabbit of the princess's, called Frederick, mysteriously disappeared. And then came a terrible morning when the Mexican lapdog disappeared. He had barked ever since the dragon came to the island, and people had gotten quite used to the noise. So when his barking suddenly ceased, it woke everybody up, and they all went out to see what was the matter, and the lapdog was gone. A boy was sent to wake the army so that it might look for the lapdog, but the army was gone too, and now the people began to be frightened. Then Uncle James came onto the terrace of the palace, and he made the people a speech. He said, "Friends, fellow citizens, I cannot disguise from myself or from you that this purple dragon is a poor, penniless exile, a helpless alien in our midst. Besides, he is no end of a dragon." The people all thought of the dragon's tail, and they said, "Hear, hear." Uncle James went on. "Something has happened to a gentle and defenseless member of our community, and we don't know what has happened." Everyone thought of the rabbit named Frederick, and they groaned. "The defenses of our country have been swallowed up," said Uncle James. Everyone thought of the poor army. "There is only one thing that can be done." Uncle James was warming to his subject. "Could we ever forgive ourselves if by neglecting a simple precaution we lost more rabbits, or even perhaps our navy, our police, our fire brigade? For I warn you, the purple dragon will respect nothing, however sacred." Everyone thought of themselves, and they said, "What is the simple precaution?" Then Uncle James said, "Tomorrow is the dragon's birthday. He is accustomed to having a present on his birthday. If he gets a nice present, he will be in a hurry to take it away and show it to his friends. He will fly away and never come back." The crowd cheered wildly, and the princess from her balcony clapped her hands. "The present the dragon expects," said Uncle James cheerfully, "is rather an expensive one. But when we give, we should not give in a grudging spirit, especially to a visitor. What the dragon wants is a princess. We only have one princess, it is true, but far be it from us to display a miserly temper at such a moment, and the gift is worthless that costs the giver nothing. Your readiness to give up your princess will only show how truly generous you are." The crowd began to cry, for they loved their princess, though they saw their first duty was to be generous and to give the poor dragon what he wanted. The princess began to cry, for she did not want to be anybody's birthday present, especially a purple dragon's. And Tom began to cry because he was so angry. He went straight home and he told his little elephant, and the elephant cheered him up so much that presently the two grew quite absorbed in a little top that the elephant was spinning with his little trunk. Early in the morning, Tom went to the palace. He looked across the downs. There were hardly any rabbits playing there now, and he gathered white roses and threw them at the princess's window till she woke up and looked out. "Come up and kiss me," she said. So Tom climbed the white rose bushes and kissed the princess through the window. "Many happy returns of the day," he said. Then Mary Ann began to cry, and she said, "Oh, Tom, how can you? You know perfectly well." "Oh, don't," said Tom. "Why, Mary Ann, my princess, what do you think I should be doing while the dragon was getting his birthday present? Don't cry, my own little Mary Ann. Fido and I have arranged everything. You only have to do as you were told." "Oh, is that all?" said the princess. "That's easy. I've always done that." Then Tom told her what she was to do, and she kissed him again and said, "Oh, good, dear, clever Tom, how glad I am that I gave you Fido. You two have saved me. You are so dear." Now the next morning, Uncle James put on his best coat and his best hat and the vest with the gold snakes on it. He was a magician, and he had a bright taste in vests, and he called with a cab to take the princess out. "Come, my little birthday present," he said tenderly. "The dragon will be so pleased, and I'm glad to see you're not crying. You know, my child, we cannot begin too young to learn to think of others. The happiness of others is far more important than our own. I should not like my dear little niece to be so selfish, or to wish to deny a trivial pleasure to a poor sick dragon far from his home and his friends." The princess said she would try not to be selfish. Presently the cab drew up next to the pillar, and there was the dragon, his ugly purple head shining in the sun, and his ugly purple mouth already half open. Uncle James said, "Good morning, sir. We have brought you a small present for your birthday. We do not like to let such anniversaries go by without a suitable testimonial, especially to one who is a stranger in our midst. Our means are small, but our hearts are large. We have but one princess, but we give her freely. Do we not, my child?" The princess said that she supposed so, and the dragon came a little nearer. Suddenly a voice cried, "Run!" and there was Tom, and he had brought the zoological guinea pig and a pair of Belgian hares with him. "Just to see fair," said Tom. Uncle James was furious. "What do you mean, sir," he cried, "by intruding upon a state function with your common rabbits and things? Go away, you naughty little boy. Play with them somewhere else." But while he was speaking, the rabbits had come up, one on each side of him, their great sides towering ever so high, and now they pressed him between them so he was buried in their thick fur and almost choked. The princess, meantime, had run to the other side of the pillar and was peeping around to see what was going on. A crowd had followed the cab out of the town. Now they reached the scene of the state function, and they all cried out, "Fair play! Play fair! We can't go back on our word like this. Give a thing and take a thing? Why, it's never done. Let the poor exiled stranger dragon have his birthday present." And they tried to get at Tom, but the guinea pig stood in the way. "Yes," said Tom, fair play is a jewel, and your helpless exile shall have the princess, if he can catch her. Now, Marianne, run!" Marianne looked around the big pillar and she called to the dragon, "Bet you can't catch me!" And she began to run as fast as she could, and the dragon ran after her. When the princess had run half a mile, she stopped, dodged around a tree, and then ran back to the pillar and back around it, and the dragon ran after her. You see, he was so long that he could not run as quickly as she could. Around and around the pillar ran the princess. The first time she ran around a long way from the pillar, nearer and then nearer, with the dragon after her all the time, and he was so busy trying to catch her that he never noticed that Tom had tied the very end of his long, tight, whipcordy tail to the rock, so that the more times the dragon ran around, the more times he twisted his tail around the pillar. It was exactly like winding a top, only the peg was the pillar, and the dragon's tail was the string, and the magician was safe between the Belgian hares, and he couldn't see anything but darkness or do anything but cough. When the dragon was wound onto the pillar as much as he possibly could be, and as tight like cotton on a reel, the princess stopped running, and though she had very little breath left, she managed to say, "Ha! Who's won now?" This annoyed the dragon so much that he put out all his strength. He spread his great purple wings and he tried to fly at her. Of course, this pulled the tail, and pulled it very hard, so hard that as he pulled, the tail had to come, and the pillar had to come around with the tail, and the island had to come around with the pillar, and in another minute the tail was loose, and the island was spinning around exactly like a top. It spun so fast that everyone fell flat on their faces, and they held on tight to themselves because they felt something was going to happen, all but the magician, who was choking between the Belgian hares, and he felt nothing but fur and fury. And something did happen. The dragon had sent the kingdom of Rotundia spinning the way it ought to have gone at the beginning of the world. As it spun, all the animals began to change sizes. The guinea pigs got small, the elephants got big, and the men and women and children would have changed sizes too if they had not had the sense to hold on to themselves very tight indeed with both hands, which of course the animals could not be expected to know how to do. And the best of it all was that when the small beast got big and the big beast got small, the dragon got small too, and he fell at the princess's feet, a little crawling purple newt with wings. "Ah, funny little thing," said the princess. "I will take it as a birthday present." But while all the people were still on their faces holding on tight to themselves, Uncle James, the magician, never thought of holding tight. He only thought of how to punish Belgian hares and the sons of gardeners. So when the big beast grew small, he grew small with the other beasts. And a little purple dragon, when he fell at the princess's feet, saw there was a very small magician named Uncle James. And the dragon took him because it wanted a birthday present too. So now all the animals were new sizes, and at first it seemed very strange to everyone to have a great lumbering elephant and a tiny little dormouse, but they've gotten used to it now, and they think no more of it than we do. All this happened several years ago, and the other day I saw in the Rotundian Times an account of the wedding of the princess with the Lord Thomas Gardner, K.C.D., and I knew she could not have married anyone but Tom. So I suppose they made him a lord or something on purpose of the wedding, and K.C.D. of course means clever conqueror of dragons. If you think that is wrong, it is only because you don't know how they spell rotundia. The paper said that among the beautiful presents of the bridegroom to the bride was an enormous elephant on which the bridal pair made their wedding tour. This must have been Fido. You remember Tom promised to give him back to the princess when they were married. The Rotundian Times called the married couple the happy pair. Wasn't it clever of the paper to think of calling them that? Such a pretty and novel expression. And I think it is truer than many of the things you see in the paper. Because, you see, the princess and the gardener's son were so fond of each other, they could not help but to be happy. And besides, they had an elephant of their own to ride on. And if that is not enough to make someone happy, I should like to know what is. Though, of course, I think there are some people who could not be happy unless they had a whale to sail on, and perhaps not even then. But they are greedy, grasping people, the kind who would take 4 helpings of pudding, likely as not, which neither Tom nor Mary Ann ever did. The end.